I love Mother Teresa's quote. She said, "We cannot all do great things, but we can all do small things with great love." Small things with great love. So I just want to do small things with great love. And it's more important for me to operate from a position of great love than to aspire to do great things. I've discovered for myself, at least, that often this aspiration to do great things is an egotistical aspiration.
Hey, my friends, this is Nishant, and welcome to the Nishant Garg Show. This is a podcast about helping you live a fulfilled life. The mission of the show is to spread mindfulness awareness, and my job on the show is to invite world-class experts to extract the practices, routines, and habits to help you live a fulfilled and abundant life. Have you ever wondered why smart people are not always happy? Have you ever wondered you can be happy through MBA skills without having to go to MBA school? In this episode, our today's guest, Raj, will explain you that and much more. Raj is a professor of marketing at the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas at Austin, where he relies on themes from psychology, behavioral science, decision theory, and marketing to explain consumption behavior. He also studies the impact that people's judgment and decisions have on their own happiness and fulfillment. Based on his research, he teaches a very successful online course on Coursera on happiness named A Life of Happiness and Fulfillment. His book titled, If You Are So Smart, Why Aren't You Happy, was released in the US, UK, and India in 2016. Without further ado, please enjoy this wide-ranging conversation with Raj. Raj, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Nishant. Very happy to be here.
I'm glad to have the show with you. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be around happiness and fulfillment. I'm so excited. So I would like to start with, where did you grow up, Raj?
I grew up all over India. My parents are from Tamil Nadu. So genetically, I guess ethnically, I'm a Tamilian, but my father was in the Indian Railways and he had a transferable job. So we moved literally in my first up to 12th grade until I was 16 or something, maybe 18. We moved 7 places. So some of which were in the north, some of which were in the central part of India, some in the south. I never really lived in the west as much, but the rest of India, we moved quite a bit.
So you moved a lot during your teenage times. What was your childhood like, let's say, between 13 and 18?
Between 13 and 18, I spent in Assam and then in Tiruchi and then in Madurai. And right around 18, I went to Bits Pilani, which is in the western part of India, in Rajasthan. It was very good. I really wouldn't trade my childhood for anybody else's childhood. We had no digital and electronic devices at that time. So we had to rely on kind of making conversations and sometimes even being really bored with nothing to do. But in a way that added to my life and made it better because I understood how to kind of, keep myself engaged with things. So I would just pick up some random book and read it, or go play with a grasshopper, or climb a tree, or just indulge in some daydreaming and imagination. Really, I look back on it, of course, if I'd maintained a journal at that point and I look at the journal, I'm sure that I'd have had a lot of problems and anxieties or whatever. But looking back, I feel I had a really, really great childhood.
Do you remember any of the books you read at that point?
Yeah, of course. I remember a lot of the books. I was very much into, I think 13 to 18, by then I'd grown out of Enid Blyton. I don't know if you've read Enid Blyton, a very famous or popular, I should say, author in India at that time. And I'd gotten into, I'd say, Hardy Boys and a little bit beyond it into Robert Ludlum and Alistair MacLean. And one of my favorites was P.G. Wodehouse, which I read a little bit after I turned 18. But really, ended up reading the whole series of books. He has got a few series. So I ended up reading all of that. And also comic books, Tintin and Asterix and Amar Chitrakat and Tinkle, these kinds of things. We also used to have something called Chanda Mama. I don't know if
remember that.
Okay. So that, and then there was this really great magazine that somebody had come out with called Target, which I used to really love. So a bunch of things. Yeah.
So things have changed between my time, your time, and now. What advice would you give to an 18-year-old kid now? Any
Yeah.
advice, can be any advice from life, anything.
Okay. So, first of all, I think that most people would agree that what they want out of life is to lead a happy life, lead a fulfilling life, lead a meaningful life. They'd want success out of their life. They'd want to enjoy their life, have a lot of positive experiences. And so, if you look at it from that perspective, I think that there are a few things that can help you lead that kind of a life. And one of those is not to spend too much time on electronic devices. Although it might be entertaining in the moment, it might be engaging in the moment, it leads to a lot of negative outcomes in the long run. So maybe restrict it to 2 hours, maximum 4 hours, I would say. Okay, 4 hours is still a lot of time, but in America, a lot of kids spend up to 6, 7, 8 hours on every day on electronic devices, particularly during the lockdown. So try to restrict that. Second, I would say that try and identify some kind of a skill or a passion that you have, and devote some time and attention to it so that you can become increasingly good at that thing. And this is going to take some discipline, it's going to take some grit, but it is going to pay off in the long run. It's going to make you have greater self-esteem. So maybe it's tennis, maybe it's music, maybe it's learning computer coding, maybe it's playing video games actually, okay? Whatever it is, but don't be demotivated when things are not going your way, when things are not going as well as you would like it to go, and you're not progressing as fast as you would like. There is no substitute for hard work, okay? And so remember that. And the final thing that I would say is, especially as a teenager, remember to lead a healthy lifestyle. Get your good 8 hours of sleep every night. So go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time. Try not to stay up too late, chatting with friends and things like that. It might be, again, something that's tempting and pleasurable, but in the long run, it's going to really impede your progress. So even if you go to sleep only at 2 a.m. every day, get your 8 hours of sleep. So wake up at 10 a.m. Of course, you have to get your parents' agreement to do that. But so do that, lead a healthy lifestyle, exercise for at least half an hour, 45 minutes every day, and eat good food. Don't indulge in eating a lot of junk food. Once in a while, junk food is okay, but by and large,
Yeah.
those are the things I would say.
Amazing advice. Thank you, Raj. We covered a lot of points, and I would love to ask you, what time do you go to bed?
Me personally, nowadays during the lockdown, we go to bed around 10:30, I would say. But I go to sleep around 11:15, 11:30 because I have a nightly routine. I do two very important things. I write in my journal, and then I meditate every night before I go to bed. So even though I actually am on the bed by 10:30 because of these two activities, I actually end up switching off the light or going to sleep around 11:15, 11:30, I would say.
So journaling and meditation is a common theme of this podcast, and we talk about with every guest. So I would love to ask you, what kind of meditation do you do?
My meditation is a combination of a variety of things. So I have had the good fortune of taking part in many different workshops on meditation, including the art of living and Vipassana. And one of my good friends from India, his name is Vijay Bhatt. He's got this practice called presence practice. So I kind of like marry elements from each of those. And I've also done loving kindness meditation and done some headspace meditation. So I just kind of mix, and I've got a concoction that's my own unique cocktail. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of it is spent just observing my breath, which is what might be called focused awareness. Some of it is spent observing whatever comes up, that is like open awareness. Some of it is spent doing a body scan. And some of it is spent just sending out good vibes to everybody that I love and are going through some troubling times right now. And even to people that I particularly don't care for right now because they've done something bad to me or something like this. Even the people that I dislike, I send them good vibes, and I want them to have a happy life. So it's a variety of these things that I do.
Would you say that sending good vibes is kind of a forgiveness practice?
Yeah, I think it's definitely very related to it. I don't necessarily explicitly forgive them in this practice. I just kind of imagine them. I bring their face to my mind, and then I say, may you be happy, may you be peaceful, may you be loved. And I think it leads to feeling a sense of forgiveness towards them, but I don't explicitly forgive them for what they did. Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners would be curious to know what Raj does in his life. So, Raj, what does your family describe? What you do for a living?
Oh, I am a professor at the McCombs School of Business at the University of Texas at Austin. I'm in the marketing department, and I joined the University of Texas in 2000, so it's been 20 years. And around half the time, I spent first half teaching regular marketing courses like consumer behavior and design thinking, customer insights, those kind of classes. And then in the last 10 years, I've pivoted, and much of my teaching is on happiness. And my research has also been kind of following the same trajectory, more marketing related research initially, and now more happiness related research.
Why that switch happened from marketing to happiness research?
Yeah, so I've always been very interested in the topic of happiness, and I've always, at some level, felt that that's a private hobby interest of mine, and it is not really something that I can do much about in terms of my profession. I really didn't think that there was a place for it professionally. And then in 2007 or so, I realized that even though I was very successful, quote unquote, successful on paper, I had a good job, I had a good family, I was a reputed university and publishing, and I had gotten tenure. They could never fire me. After this, I had job security, everything. I still felt that there was this sense of emptiness, kind of meaninglessness at some level. I was not as happy as I thought I would be given everything that I have. And I noticed a similar thing among my own peers and batchmates from my MBA school and my undergrad school. And I thought to myself, as an educator, what is my primary purpose? And to me, the answer was pretty obvious. It is to give tools and skills to my students so that they can lead happy lives, and by extension, make other people around them happy, make society more happy, enhance the well-being of the environment and animals and future generations and so on. And I didn't feel that I was doing it. So I just thought to myself, look, I'm kind of failing at the end goal of my objectives as an educator in terms of my objectives. So I decided to do something about it, and I put together this course on happiness. And initially, I was not sure that anybody would really take it, or even the dean would approve such a class. But everything fell into place, and I actually started teaching it in fall of 2009, like I said, about 10 years back. And it's really been a great journey, because I didn't really think that I would get this long a run teaching this, or I would end up publishing a book on it, or have 2 online courses on it, or be invited to podcasts such as this to talk about this topic. It has taken a life of its own
Yeah.
in a very nice way. Yeah.
Yeah, Raj. So we'll come back to this happiness work in a while. I would love to ask you that a lot of people have this thing. We have a job, but we are not feeling fulfilled, not finding purpose and meaning in our life. What steps did you take at that point to move to work towards your fulfillment and purpose?
Yeah, so I would say that this idea of teaching happiness, and not just saying that, oh, I'm really interested in this topic and I just wish that I could teach it, but of course I can't. I'm in a business school. Who's going to want to take it? Even if people wanted to take it, the dean wouldn't approve it, etc. I could have taken that route. And oftentimes we take that route. We are risk averse. We often assume that the world is not going to permit me to do these things. So only later, after I'd done all this, did I discover that there's actually a term used by organizational behaviorists to refer to this phenomenon, where you take your career path in a new direction that you want to go in. It's called job crafting. Job crafting. You're crafting your job in a way that is more meaningful for you. And a lot of the people, a lot of the times, are unhappy in their jobs, partly because they assume that that is what they have to do, whatever it is that they've been asked to do, and they can't change it, and they can't ask for a different job, or they can't slowly kind of branch out and do something a little bit different, or do it in a different way, the same job, etc. And so that's part of the reason why we are often unsatisfied with our jobs. Actually, in organizations and in companies, they want people to innovate. They want people to be creative. They want people to kind of branch out and do things. Of course, they want you to be successful, right, at the end of it. If you're not going to make profits and be productive at the end of all this, and it's just a vanity project, and you wanted to pursue a passion for your own sake, not for the organization's sake, then that wouldn't be good. But if you can marry the two somehow, if you can pursue your passion, but also make sure that the organization benefits from it, that is a very good outcome, and you can job craft in that way. So that is something that I would definitely say that people ought to do. Okay. Second thing that they can do is try and socialize their ideas, it's called. Basically, let's say that you're dissatisfied, and you think that the reason for dissatisfaction is because the company is not doing the things that it ought to be doing, and it's not serving the customers well or whatever. So you have new ideas, then try and socialize that idea. So try and get other people on board to support their idea. And that's a very, very important skill. As you can imagine, persuading other people to see your point of view and following you and you inspiring them can be very, very satisfying. And so there's a skill to it. You can learn the skill. And part of the skill is to talk to other people in your own level and below your level first about the idea and get them more familiar with it. And obviously do some homework and due diligence to make sure that you're selling the idea well to them. And then only after that do you take it up to your leader. And then when you do that, because you've already talked to your peers and your direct reports about the idea, they're going to be supportive of it in the meeting. And the leader is obviously going to have their own opinion, but they're also going to look at what other people think of it. And when they see a lot of support for it, they're probably going to like it. The third thing that I would recommend also is to have hobbies. So we tend to think of our work as something that we either like it or we don't. And that's it. It's fixed. But actually, if you're happy going into work, you're going to like your work more than if you're unhappy going into work. And so if you can kind of, even if you don't actually like what you do for work, but if you can find a hobby, maybe you can, raise a pet, right? I mean, there's many different ways in which you can engage in activities outside of work that is making you feel that your life is happy and fulfilled. Then that some of that happiness is going to overflow into work. So the combination of these sorts of things can increase your job satisfaction a lot.
Yeah, I read somewhere that we don't have to find our full happiness, 10 on 10 happiness from our job. We can have our part-time passion. Maybe we have a 9 to 5 job that pays our bills, but maybe from 6 to 10, we can work on our other aspects of life where that gives us more meaning and fulfillment.
Absolutely, yeah. And you can volunteer. For example, you can volunteer for Habitat for Humanity and help build houses or Big Brother, Big Sister organizations, or just to work in a community garden or just private things that nobody else benefits from, but it's very engaging, play the guitar or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and sure. I can speak for myself. I'm a software engineer. I have a software job, but I love doing the podcast on the sides.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you continue to do this, Nishant, you said you started 6 months back and you're obviously good at this. I can tell because your questions are very organic and
thank you.
Yeah. If you continue to do this, what is going to happen is that you're going to gather a following, and those followers are going to be your fans, and they're going to promote you, and then you're probably going to get high-profile guests. And when that happens, then suddenly, over let's say 3, 4, 5 years of doing this, you really have an option of a second career on your hands at some level. So if for whatever reason the software gig is not going well, or you feel like it's not really kind of tapping into your passion, you can make the switch. And because you've done it over such a long time, the people who are with you and your family, maybe you're married, but so all of those people won't find it surprising that suddenly you've switched jobs. They'll probably support it.
Yeah, thank you, Raj, for the advice. So yeah, I'm super grateful and fortunate to interview amazing people across the world in the mindfulness, happiness space. So yeah, I was super excited to have you on the show because your mission is very much aligned with the mission of this podcast, where it's not just a podcast where we just bring in people, we create meaning, we have a shared meaning, we want to spread happiness, fulfillment in the world, not just in the US, India, everywhere throughout the world. I digressed. By the way, Raj, so can we talk about your happiness course?
Sure. What do you want me to say?
So some people, or I should say smart people, are not always happy. If you are so smart, why are you not happy? Why smart people are not happy, Raj?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that the short answer is that often the smartness, the very things that make us smart, might come in the way of our happiness. Okay, so when you're smart, you have a lot of ideas, and you are very keen on sharing those ideas because you can recognize that they're better than other people's ideas, and so there's a little bit of ego involved. You want to come across as being better, superior to other people, and that desire for displaying your superiority can come in the way of happiness because people don't like people who are superiority seeking, who are the smartest, the people who always want to come across as the smartest. We, of course, recognize this. When you ask this question, would you like somebody around you who's always like coming up with the best answers and he's the smartest in the room and he's showing off his smartness? Now, people will say, no, I mean, I don't like people like that. I don't want to hang out with people like that. But nevertheless, when we ourselves are the smartest person in the room, then we kind of fall prey to that tendency. So seeking superiority. Another tendency we have, if you're smart, and particularly if you are very successful, is that we tend to deprioritize relationships. We tend to kind of sacrifice relationships for the sake of success. And this is particularly true when it comes to money success. When you're wealthy, and part of it is because of physical reasons. You get a lot of money, then you want to buy a huge home. So it seems totally understandable. You want the huge home to have its own media center, its own swimming pool, maybe if you're really, really rich, its own tennis courts or whatever. And when you build that kind of a physical boundary between yourself and other people, you're literally not going to meet as many other people because just physically you're distant from them now. And that is going to lower your chances of forging friendships and having social interactions. But also part of it is psychological. I think that when you make so much money, you start, whether you realize it or not, whether you want it or not, in very subtle ways, start looking down on other people. You find yourself to be somehow not, you don't think that you want to mix with the hoi polloi, the middle class. You're cut above the rest. You fly business class and so on and so forth. And so you deprioritize relationships when in fact, as human beings, relationships are probably our number one, determinant of happiness. So that's another way in which our happiness goes down when you're successful and smart. And the third way is that you become very mind addicted. You're smart, and by definition, it means that you can think through problems. You're good at problem solving, good at critical thinking. And often in life, even though critical thinking can help in many contexts, often in life, your best decisions are made based on your gut instinct, based on your emotional kind of inputs, rather than through thinking. And so you fall prey to what I call mind addiction. You're not mindful anymore. You're not listening to the signals of your body. You're instead overly overanalyzing things and being, quote unquote, too rational. So also people who are very smart can often be overly control seeking. They want certain outcomes to occur like they want it to occur, or they want other people to behave like they want them to behave, etc., etc. So again, in my book, I talk about 7 different reasons why smartness and success don't necessarily bring happiness. So I've talked about 3 or 4 here.
Please.
The short answer is some of the very things that make us smart and success will come in the way of our happiness. And if you don't watch out, you might end up actually losing out on what's most important to all of us, which is happiness in the quest for being smart and successful.
Interesting. Is there any correlation of money with happiness? Are you saying that if we gain a lot of money, we are not supposed to be happy?
No, I mean, I think that money is important. And if you're not making enough money to meet your basic needs even, obviously you're going to see a huge uptick in your happiness once you make that money. You're going to feed yourself, you're going to feed your family, you're going to have medical attention, you're going to have a mode of transportation, a roof over your head, and so on and so forth. So that, for sure, both at the individual level and at the country level, there's a lot of data. In fact, even beyond it, more money makes you happier. More money gives you freedom to not do the things you do not want to do. You can outsource chores. You can have a maid come in and clean up your apartment or do the dishes or walk your dog or what have you, so that you're spending your time in things that are more meaningful for you, more creative for you, etc. So there is a positive correlation between having money and being happy. It's just that it's not as positive as you might think it is. And certainly after a certain point, more money doesn't necessarily give you more happiness, particularly if that more money means spending more time working and doing things that you don't necessarily like to do. So you got to be careful and not become addicted to money, and recognize its place and not undervalue it, but at the same time focus on what's the most important for all of us, which is to lead a meaningful, fulfilling life. And when you do that, then you kind of you make money and spend money in a way that's optimal to enhance your happiness.
I love how you describe that. Having money is not a problem, but if a lot of money is not serving us in our life, if it is not adding happiness, then we get to think about something else. And positive psychology talks about the same thing, right? When our basic needs are met, then more money is not directly correlated with happiness.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of work that's ongoing right now that is adding to that. I think in general that is probably true, but at the same time, some new evidence shows that millionaires, for example, are happier than non-millionaires. Okay. Now, the problem here is that because happiness leads to success too, it's not clear whether people who ended up becoming millionaires were happy to begin with. And so they're just showing that greater level of happiness now, even after becoming millionaires? Or is it that the millions added to their happiness even more than they had before? So it's not very clear. So it's a complex kind of a
It's
topic.
complex.
Yeah,
And the
it's
thing is,
complex.
every individual in this world wants to be happy,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what. And but
Mm-hmm.
there is another Eastern philosophy regarding happiness. Let's talk about Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama says we all have happiness. I'm going to paraphrase. We all have happiness inside. Thich Nhat Hanh says there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Then why we are looking for happiness in the external world, in the external reality, when we have happiness inside? Do you have any
Mm-hmm.
thought or opinion, Raj, on this?
So I think that maybe at some level it is true that happiness is inside of us, but to reach that level and to experience that, I think takes going through a journey in which you do believe that happiness is outside of you. And in fact, happiness is outside of you in that part of the journey. As a little child, let's say that you're 4, 5, 6 years old. If I tell you, well, your happiness is inside of you, forget about the food, forget about love, forget about playing games, just sit down and be happy, they're probably not going to understand it at all. They're going to cry and they're going to reject that hypothesis. And I think that as a child, it doesn't work. For most children, I'd say almost every child, happiness, it does lie outside of them. It lies in the love the mother or the father gives. It lies in the food, good, tasty food that it eats, and in the playtime with friends and so on, and getting good night's sleep and so on. And even as an adult, I would say for most of us, that's where we are in our evolution. But if you reach the level of a Gandhi or a Nelson Mandela or even beyond the Buddha or Jesus or something like that, for those people, they really not just recognized at a conceptual level that happiness can be inside of them, but actually practiced it and experienced it. And to reach that level, I think you have to first go through the prerequisites. You have to first entertain the hypothesis that happiness is outside of me. Let me get my money and let's see if it makes me happy. And you discover it does make you happy, but not in a sustained way. And there is still some emptiness. Then you seek maybe other things. Maybe you seek mastery. Maybe you seek love. Maybe you seek belonging and so on. And then you discover that all of those things add to happiness, but not again in a sustained way. And then you eventually come to the milestone that maybe happiness is an inside job. And I need to add that mindset to be happy regardless of what is outside of me. And that takes a lot of practice and a lot of discipline. It takes meditation. It takes emotion regulation. It takes understanding the wisdom of the universe and so on and so forth. So sometimes I feel like people like that idea that happiness is inside of me, and all these good big gurus have said it, Dalai Lama has said it, so it must be true. And so I'm just going to act as if happiness is inside of me without having done that hard work, right? So it's similar to how if somebody tells you that, hey, at the level of Michael Jordan playing basketball, he's not even thinking, okay? He's just like in a flow. He's in a state of flow. So if you get into flow, you'll play like Michael Jordan. Yeah, but I mean, you got to kind of put in the practice first, right? It's not just going to automatically happen to you. And so a person with an abundance mindset who's recognized that happiness lies inside of them has done a lot of tapasya. You don't forget that. I mean, it doesn't come easy. For them, the way that they think, in fact, the way their brain is structured is different from the way that the brain of an ordinary individual is structured. They have far more gray matter in the left prefrontal cortex. They are able to control the activation of the amygdala and the hippocampus and the areas of the brain that are prone to anxiety attacks and so on. So they have done a lot of 10,000 hours plus of meditation to reach there. And for them, it is true. Happiness is inside of them. But for the rest of us, it is a truth, but it's only a conceptual truth. It's not a personally experienced truth. And it's possible to get there, but don't fool yourself into believing that you're already there when you're not. That is the worst thing you can do for yourself.
And you mentioned 10,000 hour rule. I would love to mention it about to our listeners. 10,000 hour rule is a science where if you invest 10,000 hour into any skill, then you get to the mastery level, right, Raj?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, I think that Anders Ericsson, who's worked on it, and he, bless his soul, he just passed away about a month back, would argue that, well, 10,000 hours is just a rule of thumb and it's not exactly 10,000 hours, but basically you need to invest a lot of time. 10,000 hours just so that you get a perspective on what it means. If you spend 3 hours a day, okay, to get to 10,000 hours, you're going to have to spend about 10 years of your life. Okay, 3 hours a day, okay? Every day, which means that in about 3 years, you're going to get to, in 1 year, you're going to get to about 1,000 hours. So it's about 10 years to get to that point. And that is not just mere familiarity with the domain. Let's say that I'm sitting down to meditate, but I'm not really meditating. I'm thinking about all the things, but I'm just, for the external world, it looks like I'm meditating. That's not enough. Okay. So it needs to be real meditation. It needs to be, if you're practicing tennis, it's not just going to the tennis court and just for a hobby playing, hitting the ball around. It's breaking it down and identifying a particular obstacle that you have. Maybe it's your serve. Maybe it's especially your second serve. Maybe it's especially a second serve on the ad court and not on the deuce court, and so on. And so you break it down and then get over each thing that's holding you back. And if you do it that way, then in about 10 years, you'll become a master. Okay.
Having a plan and refining approach.
Yeah. Which is where coaches matter too, because oftentimes we are blind to our own obstacles. So the I guess the short summary is that it takes a lot of time to become a master of a domain. And so it's very tempting to think that happiness is inside of me. So why should I worry about external circumstances? And then if you've not done any work to get there, you might discover that you become kind of schizophrenic in the sense that you're mouthing all these wise things and you're saying that other people's success doesn't really bother me. Happiness is inside of me. And yet you can't help but feel jealous, and you can't help but feel sad when other people around you are succeeding, and you're just pretending to be happy when you're not. And people can tell, your body can tell at some level. So don't fool yourself, be honest. I think that is the very first thing that you need to do in this happiness journey, is to be completely, brutally honest with yourself about where you are. Don't fool yourself,
Yeah, and when we are not happy, we get to embrace that. If somebody's trying to be positive all the time, we have a term, toxic positivity. Can we say somebody can be toxic happy?
Yeah. I think that pretend happy is certainly a toxic happy, kind of a toxic happiness. But otherwise, I think that you touch on an important point. I think if everything falls into place in your life, things are going well, you're probably going to be happy. You're going to feel good. You get a promotion, for example. You have a great love life. You have good health, and you got good money and a lot of pleasure and everything. It's going to be good. But sooner or later, things are not going to work out. And that's when I think it's going to really be a test of your ability to be resilient and optimistic and quote unquote happy. And part of it involves accepting your unhappiness and accepting, let's say you're feeling jealous, accepting it, but not in a way that you say, okay, I surrender to it and it can't change. Okay. But in a way that you accept it as a current state of reality, but with the intention of changing it and being intelligent about how you want to change yourself and figuring out what set of practices will get you out of that jealousy or get you out of that negativity and so on. So that's why I mentioned emotion regulation before, and also mentioned mindfulness. All of those come into the picture. They can be really helpful in helping you navigate and evolving into somebody who's not just able to be happy and content when things are going well, but also equanimous and stable, emotionally happy, even happy, when things are not going well.
So you mentioned about mindfulness practices. We have talked about meditation a couple of times. Is there any other mindfulness practice would you recommend?
So I don't know what you think about the term meditation versus mindfulness. When people use the word mindfulness, often they use it interchangeably with meditation. And I think there is a subtle difference in at least the way that I use them. I think mindfulness is a particular kind of meditation, I would say, where you're trying to be aware, but without passing a judgment on whatever it is that you're aware of, and in a moment-to-moment kind of way. Whereas you can think of meditation as focusing on a particular thing, concentrating on something. So you're focusing on, let's say, your breath, okay? And you can think of that as breath meditation, or you're focusing on sending good vibes to other people in a loving way. That is loving kindness meditation, and so on. For all practical purposes, you can use the terms interchangeably, I would think. And so you asked me what other kinds of meditation there is. And I think that really, there's infinite kinds of meditation, I suppose. You can do a walking meditation where you're just being focused on the next step or whatever's around you at that point when you're walking. You can do swimming meditation. You can do breathing meditation. You can do sound. A lot of people are into sounds, right? And the kind of gong and the vibrations that it sends out, you can kind of meditate on it. You can meditate. You can, like prayer, right? Bhakti. Back in India, this is a very, very big thing. And to most people, like my parents' generation, they don't do any mindfulness. Okay, they don't do anything that any of this kind of new age jargon kind of a thing. That's what they would think of it as. They say, why would you want to do all this when you can just sing a bhajan and just surrender yourself to the God in that moment, and have full love and bhakti, and to whichever God you is your favorite. So there's just a lot of different kinds.
And this reminds me of an athlete. So I'm forgetting her name. So she is a world-renowned athlete, and she does play the song on a repeat. So it becomes a transcendental meditation when one song is going on repeat and repeat and repeat while you're running. It's a meditation, transcendental meditation, like mantra.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Would you say that happiness is moment to moment?
Yeah, I think that in the sense that whatever you're experiencing right now, there's no guarantee that it's going to last in the next moment, or certainly like a few minutes from now. And you can, of course, engineer your life in such a way that it is sustained, or good things happen, good emotions come, but you can't guarantee it. So at some level, for you to, if you want to be happy in a sustained way, then you have to get comfortable with this fact that everything changes, everything is impermanent, which is, of course, the very first kind of basic truth in Buddhism, right? So in that sense, happiness is a moment-to-moment emotion, I would say.
Yes. And as a listener to this podcast, I'm thinking, Raj, okay, I understand all these things. What should I do from point A to point B? What are the exercises would you recommend? And you have recommended many modules and exercises in your course. Could you walk us through some of the exercises in brief?
Sure. We talked a little bit about this idea of the journey, that you want to eventually get to a point where happiness is an internal thing and you have complete control over it, or you're able to self-regulate yourself emotionally. But to get there, I think it's a longish journey for most people. And you start with an understanding of what are the requirements of happiness. And I would say there are at least 5 different requirements. One of those is your basic needs need to be fulfilled. Even the Buddha, right? Maybe he self-abnegated and he denied himself food and pleasure and all those things. And he later discovered that that's not a good thing to do if you want to be happy. Okay? You don't want to be greedy and overconsume, but you certainly want to have enough food and enough sleep and enough clothing to be warm or protect yourself and so on. And so he called it the middle path. Okay? So you need definitely some level of basic need. You recognize that and you work towards it. And if you're not in a position to fulfill your basic needs, then do that. Focus on that. Get that money, get that job, get whatever it takes to fulfill your basic needs, not for yourself alone, but also for your family. Then come 3 goals that I call MBA goals, and just a mnemonic, because I'm in the business school, it's convenient, people can remember it. M stands for mastery. So you need to be good at doing something. B stands for belonging. It means having at least one really good friend or relationship. And A stands for autonomy, having a sense of control over your life, having a routine, having a place that you can call for yourself, having the ability and the authority to make at least the most important decisions in your life, like who to marry and what kind of job to have, which city to live in, and so on. So MBA, mastery, belonging, autonomy. And then finally, of course, that mindset of abundance, as I called it, where you are able to regulate your own emotions. And so each of these calls for different things. So basic needs fulfillment, you need a job, you need to be good at saving money, you need to protect your own health, and so on and so forth. Mastery, you need to have discipline, those 10,000 hours that we talked about. Belonging, you need to be good at making good friendships and not be overly desperate for friendships or avoidant of other people. And then autonomy, you need to recognize that having a certain level of authority and voice in your organization, for example, right, is very, very important for your happiness. But ultimately, it also comes to internal control, having autonomy over your own mind, over your own feelings. And finally, that abundance mindset, kind of practicing, putting into place a set of practices that make you feel that your life is good, that you're already having a lot of good things happening in your life. And you don't necessarily need any more in terms of money or relationships or success and things like that. Because ultimately, you can always tell yourself the story that I need more, I need more, I need more. And we know that that's not going to make you a happy person. There's no limit to how much it is that you'll want if you go on that kind of a trip. So you have to, at some level, say, okay, I have enough for basic needs. I have more than enough for not just basic needs, but even for a comfortable, even luxurious life. At some point, I have to tell myself, okay, enough is enough. And that's it. And if I can't be happy with what I have, I'll probably never be happy.
Are you saying being appreciative of what we have and then going after what we want?
Exactly. Right. And so there's some practices that can help in each of these things. And with the last one, the abundance mindset, what I've discovered is, if you just write in your journal, we talked about my journaling practice. This is what I do. I write about everything that happened that day, but I end with 3 good things that happened that day. And these may not be big good things, obviously, right? If you're writing it every day, then it can't be like I got a promotion today and so on. But it's going to be small things. Like, for example, hey, I thought I had lost this little tennis ball that I used to play with my dog, and I suddenly found it under a couch. Or that this stranger that I hadn't seen in a long time, who always used to smile at me when I went for a walk in the mornings, she was back and she smiled at me today. So little things, take pleasure from little things. And that is going to prove so valuable to you when your life is not going so well, that your mind is automatically looking for all the good things in your life. Otherwise, we have the tendency for negativity bias. We look at negative things and focus on it. But if you train your mind, you start looking at all the positive things. That's very, very valuable for creating that sense of abundance.
And it's super difficult for A-type achievers to really stop and appreciate what we already have.
Yeah.
So Raj, we are recording this podcast in the morning. So what did you write yesterday night as part of your gratitude?
Yeah. So we just recently got a dog from the shelter, and he's a really cute puppy. He's about 7 months old, and he's a mix between an Australian Shepherd and a Golden Retriever. But I think he's been abused in the past. I don't know for sure, but he's very, very skittish and scared, particularly of men. And I'm obviously a man. And so even though I was the one who brought him home, he's actually more in love with my kids and my wife and so on, which is a little bit ironic, right? Because I was the one who brought him. But nevertheless, so he's such a source of engagement and pleasure that I can't tell you. I'm so lucky. We're all so lucky to have him join the family. He came about 5 days back, and he's already kind of found a place for himself in the family. So I wrote a little bit about that. I also literally wrote about this ball that we lost the very first day that he was there. And, so it was an actual example from what happened yesterday. And the third thing that we wrote about, that I wrote about, was that we all as a family, and my daughter had a friend over as well, just for this event. We all went to a neighboring restaurant that is dog friendly. And it's really, we were just reminding ourselves of how lucky we are to have a really great neighborhood restaurant that serves food that we all love. Okay. And when you have a family, you'll discover this, Nishant, that it's a tall order for everybody to be satisfied.
What is that restaurant name in Austin?
It's called Mangieri's. It's an Italian restaurant. It's in South Austin, where I live. It's literally like half a mile. So you can just walk there. We, in fact, walked back. We walked the dog back from there. So we just went over and we had this nice Italian meal. Everybody got what they really liked. And dog got a walk back as well. So those are the 3 things that I wrote about.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Raj. And who comes to your mind who is happy and successful with a lot of money?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. So I do think that there is quite a few people like that I can look up to as role models for me. And some of them are in my own department, even at the University of Texas at Austin. They're not necessarily studying happiness or teaching happiness. I don't want to take any names and put them on a spot, people writing to them, but there is a couple of people in my own department who are like that. And I also have some friends. I graduated from BITS Pilani, and then from IIM Calcutta back in India, and then from the Stern School of Business here in the US for my PhD. And I'm still in touch with all these communities, and a good proportion of them, or a good number of them, not proportion, but good number of them, maybe 15, 20 of them are in that kind of nice quadrant of being happy, if not happy, at least content with their life, and also quite successful. Okay.
So this is possible. This is possible.
For sure. Yeah, for sure it's possible. And I think that what it's going to take at some level is a sense of perspective and a sense of appreciation, and not continuing to be greedy for more and more and more on the material side. Really, I mean, being compassionate and looking at the outside world and saying that I have enough and there's lots of people who are suffering. What can I do for them? I think that's a very critical element of leading a happy life.
Contribution. And this reminds me of Tony Robbins. He says that if you're not happy wherever you are, you will never be happy wherever you go.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
Awesome. So what does your first 60 to 90 minutes in the morning look like? What do you do?
So nowadays, it's changed because of the dog. So nowadays, I wake up in the morning and more or less the first thing that I do is measure my blood pressure and my fat percentage in my body. Because I have genetically a blood pressure issue that is down my father's side. My father started taking blood pressure pills when he was 38 years old. And I just started taking them about, 3 months, 4 months back. I take the lowest dosage, 5 milligram, but it really helps. So it keeps my blood pressure under check, but I still want to monitor it. So I do that and also measure my fat content. I want to keep it at certainly below 20%, but ideally around 15%. It's hovering around 18% for a while. And I've discovered that if I hit the gym on a regular basis and I don't eat a lot of carbs, then it goes down, okay, which is my attempt.
Do you use for fat measurement?
I don't remember the name of the brand, but it's got this kind of two arms and you hold it and it shows you your fat content in about.
I was thinking, yeah, if you can send us later on, sure. I can put in the show notes. Yeah. We all need to reduce fat.
Yeah, sure. I mean, many Indians have that problem. I think that we just are very carb heavy in our diet, like simple carbs. And what happens when you do that is that all the energy is used, the carbs are used up. And so the rest of the energy through the fat gets stored in your body. So we need to reduce our carb intake and also exercise more. That I do. And then I have this thing called golden milk, which is hot milk with some turmeric and some crushed black pepper and a little bit of honey. I put some honey in it just to kind of make it taste better. So I have that. It's supposed to be good for you. And then I'm nowadays, my wife and I go for a walk with the dog. We try and do 2 rounds, which is about a mile in my community. And then I come back and I make breakfast, or I help my wife make breakfast for everybody, for the kids and everyone. So, and then I take a shower and then I do these kinds of things, podcasts, or I work on stuff. So that's pretty much the first 60 to 90 minutes.
Yeah. What's your go-to breakfast?
Oh, yeah. So I love having a parfait, which is kind of like a mixed crushed fruits on top of a bed of yogurt and maybe a little bit of honey on top. So usually we kind of grind some strawberries and raspberries and blueberries, some combination of those, sometimes bananas, and then we put it on top of the yogurt and have it. Everybody loves it in the family. And then nowadays, just in the last month or so, we have started making smoothies, and where I crush some spinach. The simplest of smoothies really works out best. Spinach leaves, baby spinach leaves, a little bit of lemon juice, and then some oatmeal. Okay. And if you can add some fruits, what we've discovered is that kind of overripe banana is very, very good for this. So these 4 things and a little bit of oatmeal, and it doesn't have to be cooked, just fresh oatmeal. The raw oatmeal rather, just half a cup. Put all this together in the grinder and grind it up. And it's really, it sounds like it won't be tasting so good, but it actually tastes very good. So we have that. And I personally like my eggs. I have an omelette. And so it's a big breakfast. Okay? So.
Love it. So, all right. And Raj, so before I ask you my last question, I would love to ask you, where can our listeners find you online, where they can learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, so my website, it's happysmarts.com, HAPPYSMARTS. It's all one word, www.happysmarts.com. They'll find a lot of links there, a lot of resources. I even have my autobiography there. And you can do some happiness exercises if you want. You can measure your own current levels of happiness. So that is one website. There's another website called A Heroic Journey, heroicjourney.com. That website is more for people who want to enhance their happiness in their work life, in their professional life. So again, there's a bunch of exercises there. There is happiness measurements and scales, etc. And if they want to kind of dig into my courses, there's one on Coursera. If they type in A Life of Happiness and Fulfillment and Coursera in Google, then that course will come up. Or they can take the other course, which is Happiness in the Workplace. It's called Heroic for short, which is why my second website is called A Heroic Journey. That is Happier Employees and Return on Investment course. So that's why it's Heroic, Happier Employees and Return on Investment course. And they can type in that and it'll come up. It's a course on edX, EDX. And of course, I have my book. If you're so smart, why aren't you happy? You can Google it and it'll come up on Amazon or one of these bookstores. You can buy it from there. So those are the things that come to the top of my mind.
We'll put them in the show notes. Can we find you in the University of Texas?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, type in my name and U Texas, and you'll go to my website.
Amazing. And my last question to you, Raj, is what is the impact you want to leave on this world?
That's a very, very interesting question. And most people are a little bit surprised or maybe even disappointed by my answer. I don't know if I want to leave an impact. I just want to, people who get in touch with me come into my life either directly face to face or through my website or whatever. I want to make their life slightly happier. I'm not really worried about the universe or the world or anything like that at a very mega level. Right now, maybe there is suffering going on and I want to ease it for animals, for human beings, for environment and so on. And I'm trying to do my little bit. I love Mother Teresa's quote in this context. She said, "We cannot all do great things, but we can all do small things with great love." Okay? Small things with great love. So I just want to do small things with great love. And it's more important for me to operate from a position of great love than to aspire to do great things. I've discovered for myself, at least, that often this aspiration to do great things is an egotistical aspiration. And I'm not even sure what exactly is a great thing. If you look at the Second World War, we all hate it and despise it, but there's no doubt that because of it, there's a huge period of peace that followed. And also lots of new inventions happened, including the microwave, for example, right? So to say that I want to do great things when the universe has existed for 14 billion years and Earth has existed for 4.5 billion years and how long it's going to continue to exist, it's a long, long, long journey. Anything that you do is a small, small molecule in a big, gigantic ocean. So you can aspire for great things, but I don't really think that any of it is really going to be that great in the long term of things.
Amazing.
So,
I love your authentic response. Thank you so much for that. Well, Raj, thank you so much. It was wonderful, wonderful conversation with you. I'm thrilled.
Same here, Nishant. Like I said, I really think that you have a great talent for this, and I wish you all success. And I look forward to seeing this edited, and I will send it out to you.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to this podcast on Apple Podcast, or you can visit https://nishantgarg.me, NISHANTGARG.me. You can also share this episode with your loved ones to help them live a fulfilled life. You are not alone in this journey. We all struggle in life. There is no shame in talking about it. I go through my highs and lows. I get depressed, and these practices help me in living a resilient life. You can also do this. You got this. Don't judge yourself. You are doing the best you can. And thank you so much again.